Welcome to Fireside Gaming. I'm Billum, and we're doing something a little different this time around. Typically, I handle reviews of retro games, but now I'm expanding out to cover indie games too. We're starting this new video series, which I'm calling Indie Insight, with a look at Spark the Electric Jester. Let's start this off real quick with an elevator pitch for the game. Basically, take a heavy dose of Sonic the Hedgehog level design and controls, combine it with some extra movement abilities from Mega Man X, and finally, add in Kirby's copy abilities to beef up the already solid melee combat. If all of that sounds like a fun combination, then stick around for a longer breakdown of the game. But before that, here's a quick spoiler warning. I'm not going to be diving fully into the story this time around, but I do want to discuss some of the basics to get players started. Spark the Electric Jester stars a character of the same name. He's a college graduate with an engineering degree that's having trouble finding a job. Something very relatable. Unfortunately, automation of the world has resulted in robots taking the jobs he seeks. During this time, Spark has been upgrading his jester hat he built in college. It allows him to directly touch and wield electricity. This hat catches the eye of a circus owner that believes Spark would do well in his troupe. And while Spark does enjoy performing, he only completes one show before being fired. That's due to a robot copy of him, which he names Fark, for fake Spark, being built to take his place. Spark is yet again jobless, and it doesn't look like he'll be able to pay his rent this month. But he's got bigger problems to worry about than that. While he laments his situation, the robots rebel with plans to take over the world. This sees Spark putting on his trusty jester hat and setting out to stop the mechanical menaces. The story of Spark the Electric Jester is a fun one. It's got some heavy Sonic the Hedgehog influences, but that comes as no surprise. The game wears its love for the blue hedgehog on its sleeve. That's due to the developer, I am so sorry because I am probably going to butcher this, Felipe Dineless, being a big fan of the franchise and even making several Sonic fan games before switching to the Spark series. Yes, I said series. There are currently 2 Spark the Electric Jester games out. You can see the first one is 2D, but the second one switches to 3D and appears to mimic the early 3D Sonic games, such as Adventure 1 and 2. There's also a third Spark game in development, and what I've seen from it so far looks good. But let's get back to the first game, since that's what this review is all about after all. As I already said, Spark the Electric Jester is heavily inspired by 2D Sonic the Hedgehog games. That means players are going to experience an intense sense of speed while traversing through a variety of levels. However, the game isn't just a Sonic clone. It mixes up the gameplay by bringing in elements from other games. For example, Spark has a dash button to easily get him up to speed, while also having the ability to wall jump. These both remind me of the Mega Man X series. In addition to that, Spark can change his abilities with a variety of different powers to collect. A few examples include the basics, such as fire and ice, but there are also some more interesting ones, like magic, edge, and night. Truthfully, some of these abilities are more useful than others, but maybe that's just me leaning towards my personal favorites. The extra abilities really do a lot to push Spark beyond just being a Sonic clone. Many of them offer different movement capabilities that will let him navigate levels differently. While we're talking about levels, Spark has some dang good level design. There's plenty of places where players can get up to speed while also being balanced with combat along the way. Some of my favorite levels give Spark a hoverboard. This gives him even more speed while also letting him blow past enemies. This is due to extending the time players can spend in the air with its attack. If there's one area where Spark's gameplay does suffer, it would be the combat. The game doesn't offer much in the way of challenge, with even late-game bosses being beaten fairly easily. And while that is a bit of a bummer, players can tackle harder modes if they want to give themselves a little extra challenge. On the subject of those harder modes, some of these include different ways to play through the story. Among that is a wish mode that lets Spark access any of the abilities he can collect in the game from his menu, so you can just change and use any of the abilities, which is a really cool bonus. On that same note, players can also unlock the ability to play through the game as Fark. I played this mode for a bit, but didn't end up beating it. It's mostly a rehash of the main game, and I wasn't all that keen on going through the same levels again just to have beaten the game completely. With that said, I will note that the bosses are more difficult in this story with extra phases to mix up the encounters. I also do want to mention that some of the dialogue in Spark the Electric Jester is a bit stiff and just kinda sounds off. The developer is from Brazil, so I figure this was just a case of poor translation. It doesn't really harm the experience for me personally, but I did think it was worth mentioning. Moving on, I want to talk about the visuals of Spark the Electric Jester. The game looks dang beautiful, with a great care for the details. Spark also has a solid design, even if he kind of looks somewhat like a yellow Sonic the Hedgehog in a hat. There are some moments where the sprite art doesn't quite move right when rotating, and you notice it, but again, I don't see it as anything that truly hampers the experience. Spark also has some animated cutscenes, and I could see these being hit or miss with players. They basically look like they were made in MS Paint and have a rough style to them. I personally found it to be charming in its own way, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were a turnoff for some people. When it comes to the music, I can safely say that Spark the Electric Jester delivers. I enjoyed all of it through my playthrough, and I think the only real negative I can say is that none of it stuck out enough for me to remember it after closing down the game. While I'm sure that makes it sound bad, it's really not. It just means it serves the goal of background music by staying in the background. I do have to point out one fatal flaw that Spark the Electric Jester has. Something to do with its coding makes it not work well with X input controllers. This means that pausing the game may cause it to freeze up, and players will have to close it down and open it again to resume playing. That's a clear issue that needs to be addressed, but it doesn't look like the developer has any intention of doing so, since there's simply a warning about this bug when the game starts up. Overall, Spark the Electric Jester is a good game that's worth playing. If you enjoy Sonic, Mega Man X, or Kirby games, it might just appeal to you. The gameplay is fast and fun, with the power system offering its own unique twist on levels already heavily influenced by the 2D Sonic the Hedgehog games. I intend to delve further into this series with a look at the second game sometime down the line. I'll be interested to see if I enjoy it, since I'm not the biggest fan of the Sonic Adventure games. Actually, it's just that I don't care for any of the non-Sonic levels, so that means Spark 2 could be right up my alley if it sticks to a single protagonist. And before we close out, I should mention that Spark the Electric Jester is only available on PC. In fact, it looks like Steam is the only storefront players can buy it from. That's kind of surprising since the game seems like it'd be perfect for a digital release on consoles, but that's not my decision to make. Thanks for stopping by and watching my review. Feel free to let me know if you want me to do more of these indie game reviews, or if you'd rather I stick with the retro reviews, which I'll still be doing by the way. And as always, take it easy.